There is a silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from something much deeper. It's the kind of silence that arrives after betrayal, not loud, not violent, but devastatingly quiet. Scorpio, listen closely, because this silence you're feeling in your spirit right now is not an accident. It is not confusion. It is the beginning of a universal recalibration. You were betrayed. Not in the way others are, but in a way that slices the soul. In a way only a Scorpio could understand, because they didn't just lie to your face, they lied to your soul. They misread your silence as weakness. They mistook your loyalty as something disposable, and they thought they could walk away from your love without consequence. But here's the part they never saw coming. You were never just a person in their life. You were their mirror, their karma activator, their last chance at redemption. And now that you're gone, the universe is speaking in a language only their soul can understand. It's no longer about revenge, it's about divine correction. And the one thing they never expected is that the universe would answer back on your behalf. Because here's what they never realized. When a Scorpio withdraws their energy, they don't just leave your life, they leave your spiritual ecosystem. And when that light disappears, the shadows don't just grow, they consume. Scorpio, you were not just a chapter in their life. You were the threshold between who they were and who they could have become. But now that threshold is closed, not because you slammed the door, but because they refused to see your worth when it was wide open. And so this message is not for them. This message is for you. For the Scorpio who chose dignity over drama. For the Scorpio who watched someone destroy the bridge you built with love and still didn't curse them while it burned. This message is a confirmation. You are not crazy. You are not bitter. You are not vengeful. You are finally being seen not by them, but by the universe itself. The scales are shifting, not because you demanded justice, but because you finally let go. And in that sacred letting go, your soul whispered one silent command to the cosmos. Return to me everything that was taken. And the universe listened. So stay here with me, Scorpio. Stay until the end. Because by the time this message is complete, you will understand why your absence is creating earthquakes in their life, and why your soul's silence was the most powerful thing you've ever done. Part 1. The silence that shattered their world. There's something terrifying about the kind of silence a Scorpio gives when they're done, not the kind that begs for attention, not the kind that needs to be explained. No, this silence is ancient. It's spiritual, and it echoes louder than any scream ever could. Scorpio, when you withdrew, they didn't feel it at first. They were too busy celebrating your absence, assuming they had won. That you'd broken, that you were somewhere grieving while they moved on. What they didn't know is that your silence wasn't a breakdown. It was the sound of reconstruction. You see, when a Scorpio detaches the soul of the person who lost them, starts to feel it not in their head, but in their spirit. The silence creeps in slowly. A forgotten birthday here, an empty chair in the kitchen, a conversation that used to flow, now just falls flat. At first, it feels like loneliness, but then it becomes something far worse. It becomes spiritual starvation, because you weren't just a lover. You weren't just a friend, you were a frequency. You were the stabilizing current in their chaotic storm, the deep eyes that saw straight through the masks they wore for the world. And they thought you were just gone. No, Scorpio, you did not disappear. You simply took back your soul. And in doing so, you left behind something they never expected a void, a soul-level void. At first, they blamed you. How dare you cut off contact? How dare you move on without closure? But slowly, their mind turned inward. They started noticing things. They couldn't sleep through the night. They felt exhausted for no reason. Things started slipping. Relationships, projects, confidence. Because your silence, Scorpio, was never passive. It was a message, a mirror. and that mirror was starting to show them something they had refused to see. The parts of themselves they only ever kept hidden because you accepted them anyway. You made them feel seen. You made their darkness feel less terrifying. But now that you're gone, they're staring into that darkness alone. And it's not romantic anymore. It's not poetic. It's just terrifying. Here's what no one tells them about a Scorpio silence. It's not cold, it's not cruel, it's sacred. Because that silence is where you go when words no longer serve truth. It's the place where you begin to transmute pain into wisdom, heartbreak into power, and betrayal into spiritual clarity. And they can feel it, even if they can't explain it, even if they deny it, even if they pretend you never mattered. Their soul knows. And it trembles. Because somewhere deep inside they realize the person I pushed away was the only one who ever held my soul without flinching. They remember your eyes, not how they looked, but how they saw. They remember the way you stayed silent when they tried to provoke you, not because you were weak, but because you were calculating the spiritual cost of every word. And when you finally stopped speaking, that's when their world began to collapse. Not all at once, no. The universe is patient. It started with insomnia, then anxiety, then fatigue that no coffee could cure. The small betrayals they committed against others began returning to them. The opportunities they once bragged about suddenly vanished. The peace they pretended to have, it shattered. Because when you withdrew your energy, Scorpio, you didn't just walk away. You removed a life source. You unplugged the machine that kept their illusions running. And now they are breaking. Not loudly, but quietly, painfully, spiritually. And all because of a silence they thought meant you gave up. But Scorpio, you didn't give up. You evolved. Life lesson from part 1, never underestimate the healing power of silence. When you stop explaining yourself to people who never listened, you free your energy to create the next version of yourself, the version that no longer needs validation, only alignment. Part 2. When karma answers your absence. Scorpio, you never went looking for revenge. That's not your path. Your soul doesn't crave punishment, it craves truth. And that's exactly what karma brings. Not drama, not spectacle, but truth served cold, often in silence. You see, what most people forget is this: karma isn't lightning from the sky. It's not a theatrical collapse. It's the mirror. The slow unraveling of everything false when your energy is no longer there to hold up the illusion. They didn't fall because you cursed them. They fell because they were already hollow and your presence was the only thing giving their life meaning. And once you left, the echo began. It started small. Their conversations lacked depth. They laughed, but the joy didn't land. They slept, but the rest never came. They succeeded, but the victory felt like ash in their mouth. Why? Because you, Scorpio, were the soul in the story. You were the undercurrent beneath the moment. You were the divine calibration that made everything real. And they didn't just lose a partner or a friend. They lost spiritual access. They lost the last pure portal to self-awareness they had. And that is when karma begins her work. But let's make something clear. Karma didn't come because you demanded it. She came because you released it. You finally stopped trying to fix what kept breaking you. You stopped trying to make someone see what they were committed to ignoring. You let go. And when a Scorpio lets go, the universe takes over. Now, they don't understand what's happening. They think it's just a rough patch. They blame the economy, their co-workers, their childhood, their partner. They blame everyone except the one person responsible, themselves. Because deep down, they know. They know they were given a rare love, one forged in emotional depth, loyalty, sacrifice, soul, and they threw it away. So now the universe is doing what it always does. Balancing. Not with thunder, not with fire, but with withdrawal. Withdrawn opportunities, withdrawn support, withdrawn grace. Because that's what happens when someone treats sacred energy like it's replaceable. they learn the hard way. It never was. And Scorpio, you don't have to watch it happen. You don't need to check their social media. You don't need to hear through mutual friends. The proof is in your own rising peace. The evidence is in your own glow returning. Your laughter, your clarity, your sleep all coming back to you stronger than before. That's the confirmation. Karma isn't about their punishment, it's about your restoration. Every ounce of love you poured into the wrong hands is now flowing back into your spirit, purified, strengthened, reborn. Because while they crumble in confusion, you are rising in silence. And the difference is this: they are losing what was never real. You are reclaiming what was always yours. Life lesson from part 2. Karma doesn't need your anger. It only needs your absence. The moment you stop participating in someone's chaos is the moment the universe starts responding on your behalf. Let go. Let it return. Part 3. The mirror of regret. They can't escape. There are some mirrors, Scorpio, that don't reflect the body, they reflect the soul. And that's exactly what you were to them. A soul mirror, a truth mirror. And when they looked into your eyes, they didn't just see you, they saw themselves. That's why they both craved and feared you, because you didn't accept the version of them they showed to the world. You touched the raw part, the unhealed child behind the charm, the suppressed fear behind the arrogance, the insecurity behind the smile. You didn't run from their shadow. You faced it, held it, even tried to heal it. And in doing so, you unknowingly held up the most dangerous mirror of all, one that showed them who they truly were and who they refused to become. That's why they betrayed you. It wasn't because you were unworthy. It was because your truth made their lies unbearable. You didn't hurt them. You exposed the part of them they had spent years hiding. And instead of choosing growth, they chose escape. But here's the thing about running from truth: eventually it circles back. And when it does, it comes dressed as regret. Regret is the cruelest companion. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers in the silence between conversations. In the songs they used to play with you, in the empty chairs at the dinner table, in the dreams where you still show up not with anger, but with the peace they never gave you. And now they can't unsee it. You're in their memory, but not in the way they expected. You're not a regretful ex. You're not a chapter they closed. You are the unfinished sentence their soul keeps trying to rewrite. Every time they look in the mirror, they see the version of themselves that failed you. And that version, it haunts them, because they know deep down they didn't just lose you. They lost their last chance to become someone worthy of real love. They thought forgetting you would be easy, but the soul doesn't forget the person who held space for its transformation, even if the ego tries to bury it. Now they search for you in others, in conversations that don't go deep, in bodies that don't hold soul, in distractions that never satisfy. But it's useless. Because what they lost wasn't physical, it was energetic, sacred, rare. And here's the twist. The mirror you held for them still exists, but now they have to hold it alone. Now they must look into it without your eyes to soften the blow. Now the only reflection they see is of someone who had everything real and couldn't recognize it. And the universe won't let them forget. Because this isn't punishment, it's a spiritual reckoning, not by your hand, but by the echo of the love they discarded. A love so deep it has now returned to you and left them to face what they refused to see in themselves. Life lesson from part 3: never shrink your truth to make others comfortable. If someone walks away from your depth, let them drown in the shallow. Your love is a mirror. Not everyone is ready to face what it shows. Part 4. Scorpio's secret becoming the fire. They thought they could burn you, Scorpio. They saw the flame in your eyes and assumed you were flammable. They saw your softness and mistook it for fragility. They pushed you to the edge thinking you'd collapse, but you didn't. You did what only a Scorpio can do. You became the fire. See, when you were younger, emotionally, spiritually, you used to run from your own intensity. You tried to make your light softer, your truth quieter, your power more palatable, but not anymore. Because the betrayal, that was the ignition, the match they didn't know they were striking. And what they lit wasn't your destruction, it was your rebirth. This is the great secret of the Scorpio soul. You are ruled by Pluto, Lord of death, rebirth, and transformation. You are the phoenix. Not the one in myth, but the real one, the one who builds its own pyre, climbs into it willingly, and allows everything false to burn. They thought they ended you. What they really did was set your evolution into motion. At first, it was agony. Let's be honest about that. It tore through your illusions. It shattered every lie you told yourself to keep the peace. It dragged your heart across the floor until even your bones were too tired to carry the story of what if anymore. But through that inferno, you didn't just survive, you transmuted. Your pain became prophecy, your grief became gravity, your silence became strategy. And most of all, your love became sacred. You no longer offer it freely, not because you're bitter, but because you've learned. You now know what it costs to pour holy water into someone else's fire, only to be blamed for the smoke. You used to try to save people from their own destruction. Now you let them burn, not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. Because saving someone who keeps lighting matches isn't compassion, it's self-abandonment. And you've abandoned yourself for the last time. Now when you rise, it's not to prove anything. It's not to get them back. It's not even to be seen. You rise because it's your nature. You rise because rebirth is your language. You rise because while others fear the fire, you know how to become it. That's why they'll never understand you. They'll call you cold, detached, intense, too much. But in reality, you're just done pretending you're not made of flame and resurrection. So let them misunderstand. Let them talk. Let them stand in their own ashes, wondering how you keep glowing while they keep shrinking. You are not who you were before the pain. You're not even who you were yesterday. You are the phoenix in motion. Life lesson from part 4. Don't fear the fire. Becoming the flame is the only way some souls are forged. What tried to destroy you was simply the fuel for your next ascension. You weren't meant to be safe. You were meant to be sovereign. Part 5. You were not meant to shrink. There was a time, Scorpio, when you tried to make yourself smaller. Do you remember a time when you tucked your intensity behind politeness, hid your depth behind silence, and folded your wild spirit into a version of yourself that someone else could handle? You shrank to fit inside their comfort zone. You dimmed your light because they flinched every time you shined. You bit your tongue so they wouldn't feel convicted by your honesty. You played soft so they wouldn't feel threatened by your strength. And you thought, if I just make myself easier to love, maybe this time they'll stay. But they didn't. And not because you were too much, but because you were never meant to fit in a box built for someone else's insecurities. You weren't meant to be gentle at the cost of your truth. You weren't meant to apologize for needing depth, loyalty, or spiritual connection. You weren't born to be convenient, you were born to be transformational. The betrayal didn't just come from them, it came from within. The moment you silenced yourself to be accepted, you betrayed your own essence. But now you see it. Now you realize that shrinking for someone's comfort never creates safety, it creates resentment. Because no matter how much you gave, they never truly met you. They met the masked version, the diluted version, the Scorpio, who was afraid of being called too intense, too deep, too much. But here's the truth. No one told you growing up, you are supposed to be too much. Too much soul for small talk, too much truth for the shallow, too much power for the insecure, too much mystery for the surface level mind. You are a spiritual ocean, and some people are only built for puddles. It's not your job to teach them how to swim. It's your job to protect the depth of your waters until someone worthy dares to dive in, not with fear, but with reverence. So let this be your final vow to yourself. No more shrinking. No more pretending your silence is comfort when it's pain. No more offering softness to those who mistake it for weakness. From now on, you show up as all of you. unedited, unapologetic, unshrinkable. Because the people who are meant for you won't need you to become less. They'll expand to meet you. They'll be inspired by your fire, not afraid of it. They'll thank you for your honesty, not punish you for it. They'll see your soul and honor it. And those who don't, let them go. Let them drown in the shallow waters they chose, while you rise like a tide that answers only to the moon. Life lesson from part 5. Never reduce your spirit for someone who was never meant to hold it. You were not born to be liked. You were born to be liberated. Stop shrinking. Start soaring. Your soul is not a whisper. It is a symphony. Part 6. The death of their illusion is not your burden. Scorpio, there's something you need to release right now, and it's not anger, not sadness, not even the betrayal itself. It's the guilt of walking away from someone who was never willing to meet you in your truth. It's the invisible weight you've been carrying, as if their downfall, their confusion, their emotional unraveling was somehow your fault. But here's the truth, it's not. The collapse they're experiencing, it's not your burden, it's the death of an illusion. They built an illusion where they could lie. Take, manipulate, ignore, and still keep your soul as their safe space. An illusion where your forgiveness would be eternal, where your presence would remain no matter how many times they disappeared, where your heart was their backup plan instead of a sacred temple to be honored. But illusions, Scorpio, can only last so long, and when the light of your absence hits them, their fantasy begins to fracture. That's why they spiral. That's why they lash out. That's why they suddenly miss you when they never showed up. Because it's not just about you, it's about what you represented: stability in chaos, depth in a shallow world, truth in the face of their denial. And now that truth is staring back at them naked and unrelenting. But here's what you must remember. You are not the one who caused their suffering. You are the one who exposed it. You were the light that revealed the cracks. You were the mirror that didn't lie. And when they couldn't handle what they saw, they chose to break the mirror, not fix the reflection. Let that sink in. Because this is where so many Scorpios falter. You feel so deeply loved so intensely that even after the pain, you still wonder, did I do enough? Should I have stayed longer? Could I have loved them into healing? No, you were never meant to be their savior. You were their wake-up call. And if they hit snooze on your love, if they refused to grow, if they chose comfort over confrontation, that is not your responsibility. Let them grieve, let them rage, let them invent stories where they're the victim. That is their soul's process, not your business. You are not responsible for how someone handles the truth you stood in. You are only responsible for your own alignment. The day you walked away was not the day you gave up. It was the day you finally realized that some souls must face their own darkness without you holding the lantern. And that's okay, because you're no longer willing to trade your peace for someone else's refusal to grow. Let that burden fall, Scorpio. Let the illusion rot without you. You are not the architect of their broken world. You simply stopped pretending it was a palace when it was really a house of mirrors and dust. Life lesson from part 6. You are not responsible for how others react to your truth. Their unraveling is not your punishment, it's their awakening. Let them face it and let yourself be free. Part 7. Why they're haunted by what they lost. Some people don't realize what they've had until it's far too late to get it back. But when it comes to losing a Scorpio, that realization doesn't just hurt, it haunts. Scorpio, they didn't think your silence would echo. They didn't believe your absence would linger. They thought you'd be easy to replace. They thought someone else could fill your space. But now, they're starting to understand what they lost wasn't just a relationship, it was a spiritual shelter. A refuge their soul didn't even know it needed until it was gone. You were the one who saw their shadow and didn't run. You were the one who held their chaos and didn't judge. You were the one who sat beside their pain and loved them through it. And now that you've gone quiet, there's a sound in their world they can't drown out the sound of their own emptiness. They try to distract themselves, jump into new connections, throw themselves into work, chase validation, scroll endlessly, drink endlessly, laugh hollowly, but nothing fills that space. Because it wasn't your presence alone they miss, it was your depth, your energy, your rare ability to see someone's soul and not look away. And that doesn't just fade, it lingers. It follows them like a scent they can't identify, like a melody they can't forget, like a phantom limb they keep reaching for it without realizing it was once part of them, and it drives them mad. Why? Because now every shallow connection feels like a lie. Every flirtation feels like performance. Every good morning from someone new feels empty because it doesn't come with the weight, the spiritual gravity that only a Scorpio carries. They compare, and no one measures up, but they'll never admit it. Instead, they'll say you were too much, too emotional, too intense, too mysterious, too demanding. But in truth, Scorpio, you were too real. And that's what they can't escape. Because when someone experiences real, everything fake after that feels like poison, and that's why they're haunted. Not because you're gone, but because you were the only thing that ever felt true. They thought they could forget. But the soul doesn't forget the one who saw it naked and loved it anyway. They can lie to the world. They can lie to their next lover. They can even lie to themselves. But at 2 a.m., in the quiet corners of their soul, they remember you. And the shame is unbearable. Because the truth is this, you were their last chance to choose authenticity over ego. And they chose wrong. Now that choice is the ghost that walks beside them, everywhere, always. Life lesson from part 7, your absence teaches louder than your presence ever could. Don't mourn those who didn't value your soul. They will be haunted by what they lost, not because you cursed them, but because you blessed them with something irreplaceable. Part 8, spiritual sovereignty, walking away without looking back. There is a moment, Scorpio, when the soul no longer waits for closure. It no longer negotiates with betrayal. It no longer pleads to be seen. It simply walks away. But here's the thing, no one warns you about. When a Scorpio walks away, they don't slam doors, they don't make speeches, they don't demand apologies. They go quiet, not because they don't feel, but because they've finally felt enough. That is spiritual sovereignty. And you, dear Scorpio, have stepped fully into it. Walking away without looking back isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the highest form of inner alignment where your intuition speaks louder than your emotions, and your peace becomes more valuable than any history you've shared. They didn't notice at first, because you didn't announce your departure. You didn't post about it. You didn't retaliate. You simply stopped showing up in places that dishonored your soul. And now, without your energy, they feel the difference. Not just in their heart, but in their spirit. Because you weren't just physically present, you were energetically invested. You loved with the intensity of someone who had already been to hell and still chose to love anyway. But they mistook your grace for weakness. They thought they could betray you and keep your loyalty. They thought you'd bend again. But Scorpio, you were never bending. You were waiting to see if they would rise to meet you, waiting to see if their soul would awaken, waiting to see if they'd choose transformation over comfort. And when they didn't, you chose yourself. That's the moment the entire cosmos shifted. Because when a Scorpio reclaims their sovereignty, they don't become vengeful, they become untouchable. Now your silence is no longer a wound, it's a boundary, a shield woven from every tear you refused to cry, every scream you swallowed, every insult you transcended. You walk now not with rage, but with ritual. Every step away from what hurt you is a step deeper into your own sacred temple. And yes, they're watching. Maybe not directly, maybe not with obvious regret, but on a soul level, they feel your absence as a gaping wound. Because when you walked away, you took back every piece of yourself they fed on without gratitude. You stopped being their emotional lifeline and started being your own source of divinity. You didn't leave them behind. You left who you used to be when you tolerated them. And that's irreversible. This is what it means to be sovereign, to know you are no longer responsible for awakening someone who keeps hitting snooze on their own soul. To let them walk their path no matter how long it takes or how lost they become. Because now you're not the rescuer, you're the embodiment of resurrection itself. Life lesson from part 8. True power isn't loud, it's quiet, consistent, and sovereign. When you stop chasing closure and start honoring your own peace, you become the version of yourself they never believed you'd become, and the version you were always destined to be. Part 9. The ascension becoming untouchable. They thought you were healing just to get back on your feet, but Scorpio, you weren't healing to return to the version of you they knew. You were healing to become the version of you they could never touch again. This is the part no one expects, the part after the pain, after the silence, after the walk away, where you don't just recover, you ascend, not in arrogance, not in spite, but in frequency. You start to notice it slowly. Certain people can no longer reach you. The old conversations feel hollow. The drama that once hooked you now repels you. You stop needing closure. You stop needing revenge. You stop needing to prove you were right. Because now you're no longer playing that game. You've entered a new realm, a spiritual altitude where their words, their gossip, their regret can't follow. And the higher you rise, the quieter everything becomes. Not because life is boring, but because the noise of their world no longer makes it into your field. You've sealed the cracks, you've called your power home, and you've built something unshakable inside yourself. They see it now, not in what you say, but in how you move. You glow differently. You walk like someone who doesn't need validation. You speak like someone who's learnt the language of their soul. You radiate the quiet fire of someone who was broken, but never destroyed. And that's what disturbs them most. They expected your downfall. They predicted your retreat. They thought your love was your weakness, but they never imagined your love for yourself would become your superpower. They don't know how to approach you now, because the version of you they betrayed no longer exists. They look for cracks, but you've turned your wounds into windows. They look for entry points, but your soul is now guarded by discernment, not fear. You don't block people with walls anymore. You simply vibrate above them. And that, Scorpio, is what it means to become untouchable. It's not that people can't reach you. It's that their energy, their chaos, their manipulations no longer have a place to land. Because you've become so clear, so aligned, so completely sovereign, that anything not vibrating at your truth gets filtered out before it even gets close. This is ascension, not floating away, but rooting deeper into who you are so fiercely that the storms can't move you and the past can't pull you back. And when people from your past try to circle back, they'll find nothing familiar, because the energy that used to attract them has evolved. It no longer begs, it no longer chases. It simply exists, brilliant, bold, whole. And that presence alone, it's enough to terrify anyone who once tried to dim it. Life lesson from part 9, Ascension isn't rising above others. It's rising into yourself. When you become so aligned that nothing fake can reach you, you don't need protection. You are the protection. You are the flame. You are the altar. You are the ascended version of everything they thought you'd never become. Part 10. Your final liberation is the beginning. Scorpio, this is where the story changes forever. Not because of what they did, but because of what you finally understood. You see, liberation doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't always come with a final conversation. It arrives like a breath, soft, unannounced, and unmistakably sacred. You feel it when you stop looking over your shoulder, when you no longer search for answers in their absence, when you realize, I don't need them to acknowledge what they did because I no longer carry it. This is the moment when you don't just walk away, you rise. You stop defining yourself by the betrayal. You stop performing for peace. You stop begging to be understood, because now you understand yourself. And that's everything. This is your final liberation. Not freedom from them, but freedom from the version of you that kept trying to be enough for people who were never equipped to hold your soul. You've shed that skin, you've buried the old cycle, and now you are becoming unapologetically whole. The universe has been watching. Every time you chose growth over vengeance, every time you chose silence over chaos, every time you loved without receiving love in return. And now, Scorpio, the universe responds not with revenge, but with repositioning. You are being moved, shifted, elevated, not just emotionally, but spiritually. This isn't about getting over it. This is about becoming the soul you were always destined to be. You once whispered, "Why me?" Now your soul whispers back, because you were strong enough to carry it and wise enough to release it. You've earned your wings. Not because you never fell, but because you kept rising when no one saw, no one helped, no one cheered. You rose for your own soul. And that is a miracle this world rarely honors, but the cosmos always does. So now, Scorpio, write it down. Not for anyone else, for you. Write your soul's declaration. I no longer belong to the pain that shaped me. I belong to the power that's becoming me. You are no longer someone's lesson. You are your own liberation. Your soul is no longer in survival, it's in sovereignty. They thought they broke you, but you weren't breaking, you were birthing. Birthing the you that no longer waits for closure. Birthing the you that no longer chases anyone. Birthing the you that no longer begs to be chosen. You are not just a survivor of betrayal, you are a blueprint of resurrection. And your peace now, it is sacred, it is earned, and it is non-negotiable. Life lesson from part 10. Liberation is not the end. It is the beginning of the life that betrayal tried to keep you from living. And now that you've stepped into your wholeness, there is no going back. Part 11. Final call to action. Dear Scorpio, if you're still here, still watching, still listening, then this message wasn't just a video. It was a spiritual mirror, a confirmation, a ceremony. You didn't find this by accident. The pain you've been carrying, the silence you've been keeping, the love you gave that was never returned, it all led you here, to this moment. And if any part of your soul whispered, "Yes, this is me," then you already know you've crossed the threshold. You are no longer the wounded lover. You are the healer of your own legacy. You are no longer living in their shadow. You are the light they never knew how to face. So here's what I want you to do now. Write in the comments below, "I reclaim my power, I rise in peace." Not for likes, not for attention, but as a sacred declaration to yourself that from this moment on, you will never again betray your soul just to keep someone else comfortable. And if this message awakened something inside you, if it reminded you of who you truly are, then don't walk this path alone. Subscribe to the Path to Buddhist Wisdom. This space was created for you, for the ones who've been burned but chose to become the fire, for the ones who see through masks, feel through silence, and heal through truth. Here you are, not too much. Here your intensity is sacred. Here your story is safe. And here your transformation is honored. Every Scorpio deserves to be reminded, you were never born to be hidden. You were born to reveal what others fear to see, even when it costs you everything. Because in the end, you don't just survive. You rise, you return, you reign.